glad to see that it filled out. It was six, and now there's many. My name is Dr. Romana Norton. I am a community counselor with Student Health and Counseling Center, Student Health and Counseling Services, CAPS. I'm on the CAPS side. Oh, thank you. I asked you all.
They have good hearing.
Yeah, they do. I'm a community counselor for transfer, reentry, and veterans. I'm also a community counselor for the African diaspora, and you are here to listen to us present on From Boots to College, student veteran transition concerns.
And good morning, my name is Victor Garcia. I'm the advisor at our Transfer Reentry Veteran Center. I'm also a UC Davis alumni. I was here a few years ago. I'm also a reentry student, or former reentry student. I'm also a veteran, so I kind of fit that trifecta of student populations that we have at our TRV Center. I was very fortunate that once I graduated from UC Davis with a marine biology degree, I was offered a position as an advisor at the TRV Center, and I've been there ever since. And no more marine biology. I really enjoy what I do. So I'm really enjoying this position that I'm in.
Yes, and I really enjoy working with TRV, Victor, Yolanda, Hope. They're wonderful to work with. Okay, our objectives for today, we're going to help you identify members of the student military community on campus. Increase your knowledge of military culture and its influence on student veterans, help you understand the unique transition issues that student veterans experience, and help you identify campus resources that are particularly useful for student veterans. And that'll be couched within our discussion of like, what can you do? And so we're gonna be relying on you all to take that and go, oh, that's something I can do in my unit, okay?
First, briefly, I want to talk a little bit about the post-9/11 GI Bill. This is the reason why a lot of our vets are here on campus getting their education, why a lot of them are here getting their post-secondary education, and also why a lot of dependents of veterans are getting their education. The post-9/11 GI Bill was a change to the old Montgomery GI Bill, which was enacted in the 80s, and it replaced that Montgomery GI Bill in 2009. It's a great benefit for those that are eligible. It gives them 36 months worth of educational benefits. It covers basic tuition and fees at any public institution in the United States. There is also some money for private institutions, but there's been a lot of news, a lot of controversy in the news about these predatory for-profit schools and how they're benefiting off of the GI Bill while the vets are not benefiting. It also comes with a book allowance, as well as a monthly stipend while they're enrolled to help pay for room and board. The catch, though, is that the VA will only pay for courses, classes, training that go towards some kind of a goal. Here at UC Davis, that's a major requirement, a college requirement, a university requirement, things of that nature. And so whenever there are academic difficulties or changes to a student's schedule, it is important that they come and talk to us because it can have an impact on that GI Bill, which a lot of our veterans are depending on financially to attend UC Davis.
A few definition of terms, and this is kind of important. We'll be talking a little later about military culture and how important it is to know the lingo. Of course, we don't expect you all to be experts. I certainly am not. But a few terms are really important. Veteran.
So veteran is an individual that has served in the armed services, Army, Navy, Marines, Air Force, even the Coast Guard. We also consider them veterans as well. We love our guardsmen. Reservist is, of course, somebody that's in a reserve unit right now that's currently serving either in an active component or an inactive reserve component. National Guardsmen, every state has their own state militia that's commanded by the state governor. There's news in Missouri right now that the National Guard that was deployed on orders from their governor. Service member is an important term that I want you all to be familiar with because if at all possible, when you're talking to a veteran or when you're talking to an active military person, you want to use the term service member. If you call a Marine a soldier, they're going to correct you very abruptly. Because we are called different things in the service. In the Army, we're called soldiers. In the Marines, the Marines, and the Navy sailors, Air Force airmen, and so on and so forth. And so using service member is a very general, broad term that really covers everybody. If you call a Marine a service member, they're not going to get offended. But if you call them a sailor, good luck. And certainly, I talked about the GI Bill and how there's an increase in the number of dependents using that. And dependents for these purposes are the children or spouses of either active duty service members or veterans here on campus.
And we're going to be focusing on, today's presentation is going to focus on our student veteran population, so those who have served. We do have all of these folks on campus, but we are focusing on student veterans today.
So we want to take a quick minute. I want you guys to turn to the person to your left or to your right. If you guys are in groups of 3, then you're a group of 3. If you're sitting by yourself, find a friend. And what we'd like for you to do is to think about, for a couple of minutes, what do you think about when you hear the term veteran? What comes to mind? What kinds of stereotypes do you see or have you heard? And amongst yourselves, just talk for a couple of minutes, and then we'll reconvene in about 2 minutes. Don't be shy.
And be prepared, folks. I'm gonna give you the heads up. Be prepared to give us share your answers with the group. All right. Sorry, I saw that, but I didn't.
Maybe ask 2 or 3 people, and then we go on to the list. Caution is down. His video is until after we do this. It's okay, 'cause we have to play for this. Start reading it.
All right, folks, believe it or not, time is up. Time is up. Let's bring it on back. All right, so I don't know if anybody heard me, but we are required to share with the group your answers. And by the way, we recognize that some of the myths that you're going to be sharing are myths that you might personally hold, but they also might be ones that are just societal that you're aware of. So, no shame, okay? All right, I'm just going to take a few responses from the audience. You all came up with stereotypes, so if you could just volunteer.
I need volunteers.
Make it easy.
Jackie and I had similar ideas. We think that maybe service members or veterans they might be older than, say, the 18, 19, 20-year-old student, and they might have life experiences that maybe make them impatient with the 18, 19, 20-year-old, maybe in class or...
I will agree to that.
Okay, and you know what? right there, that's actually not a myth. So I'm going to right away dispel any notion. If it's true, I'm going to tell you it's true right now. And so I'm going to take another
volunteer, please.
Volunteer. Okay, and
Two things. When I think of a veteran, it's a generational thing. I think of Vietnam. Now in my current position, the veterans that I have had to interact with as an academic counselor are usually seeing me because they're in academic difficulty. And the two things they bring to my attention is PTSD and traumatic brain injury.
okay, all right, we'll speak to that in a moment. Thank you.
We'll take one more.
Tend to think of veterans as heavily male. And I think when I see veterans in my office, I tend to approach them the same way I do reentry students or adult students in a way, and that they tend not to be as interested in wandering around the institution as a lot of our freshmen and sophomore students are. They come with a clear goal in mind and want to know the steps to get that goal.
That's a great observation. How many of you work with or have worked with veteran students currently? Great. So, how many of you thought of this? This is a prevailing myth that, for those of you that don't know, this is Tom Cruise in the movie Born on the 4th of July about a disabled Vietnam vet. And I just love this quote in the movie where he's angry at what's going on, and he says, I served my country, and they just want to take from it. Just take. Love it or leave it, that's what I think. Very angry, very emotional to it.
Some of the myths that have already been mentioned, some have not. Veterans are combative and physically aggressive. All veterans are men. Veterans have PTSD or emotionally unstable. Veterans have been trained to be mindless drones. Veterans are foul-mouthed and rowdy.
I may or may not agree to that. But here's the reality. The reality is that not all of our veterans are combat vets. Not all of them have seen combat. The vast majority of our veterans are not on the front lines. They're not the ground pounders. The vast majority of them are in support capacity positions. In the service, whatever branch it is, it's like a community. It's like a small city. Each post is like a small city. So you're going to need mechanics. You're going to need people that file paperwork. You're going to need police officers. You're going to need cooks. You're going to need all of these things. And so not all of them, even if they are deployed to these areas of conflict, they may not be right in the front lines.
Oop. Uh-oh. Oh, that was right. There we go.
That's guess who that is? So a long time and very many meals prior to this. I was one of those service, and this is long before Iraq. I was one of those service in these service positions. I was a cook in the Army, and a pretty damn good cook at that. But again, this is quite a ways back.
Regarding PTSD and TBIs, it's true that some vets do have PTSD. Some have, a much smaller number have TBIs, but the majority, as far as we know, I'll put that qualifier in there, do not. There's a lot of controversy over this, but that's what our best knowledge tells us to date, that it can't be all. 25% of post 9/11 veterans reportedly have PTSD, and around 7% have traumatic brain injuries, according to the CBO.
Are veterans loud? One of the myths. Sure, some veterans are loud, but then some people are loud. Some people in this room can get a little bit loud when emotions come into play. But the reality is that the majority of our veterans, they're not necessarily loud, they're just confident. So when they're speaking to you, they may be very direct in how they're answering your questions or talking about their concerns, Not so much because they're trying to be loud and in your face, but because, again, they know what their concerns are. They know what they're talking about. They have that experience, and so that may come across as a little bit combative, as a little bit loud. But the reality is, again, the military culture, the military culture really downplays that. We don't need loud people in the service. It's counterproductive to the team effort.
And I'll just add, because it's probably on some folks' mind, we do have, it is true, if anybody's wondering, that we do have in our military, for our folks that have seen combat in particular, there's a very high suicide rate, higher than previous wars, Vietnam included. And we think there's a confluence of factors going on here, but not the least of which is the multiple deployments that folks have experienced. And by the way, it's not just folks that have been in combat, boots on the ground, what did you call them? The
ground pounders.
The ground pounders, the infantry folks, but also the folks that are supposedly in the green zone. That are servicing their fellow military, and this is because of rockets and things like that are going over their heads constantly. You're driving. You may be driving vehicles that are taking supplies. You're going to be exposed to IEDs. So it's not just folks that are in combat. It's not just men. It's men and women that have been experiencing, that have been really struggling with suicidal ideation. Lastly, veterans are trained to be problem solvers, not mindless drones. This idea is another idea that's been popularized by the movie industry and its focus on basic training. I think we all have images that come to mind.
Do some push-ups.
Yeah. This is offensive to the troops and as well as to the officers. Yes, basic training instills a team mentality, a group mentality, because the mission has to get done. It takes everybody working together in their particular areas to get that done. And your lives, you are responsible for lives. On the other hand, after boot camp ends, everyone receives specialized training. And at that point, you're trained to make split-second autonomous decisions. Because out in the field, you might not have someone else or a whole group to help you out. So that myth is more wrong than you think.
One thing I want to mention that's not up here that was one of the myths about all veterans are men, and I apologize for having omitted that on here, but it's important that we recognize that although 10% of our veteran population are women, in our schools, women veterans that are going to school, that accounts for 30% of the student veterans. So a larger number of women veterans are attending school because of the GI Bill than our men are. So I just want to make sure that I did mention that, because I know that was one of the myths. And again, I apologize. Women veterans is one of those issues today that various different departments are trying to work with, trying to get them out of the woodwork, trying to get them to identify to get them the help, because as you see in the or as you will see in the handout that I gave out, our women veterans they suffer silently, unfortunately. Yes.
What is the percentage, of women veterans that are suicidal? I mean, is there like, because when I think of that, I think of men and not women. But
Well, we don't have any great statistics. A lot of folks are seeing VA officials. You all heard about. There's a lot of they're just slammed. They never expected the amount of folks that they're seeing for mental health issues, for not to mention the disabilities, because a lot of folks are surviving this war, but with catastrophic injuries. And because of the IEDs, lots of limbs blown off, things like this. So we don't exactly know. However, we do know that women in general tend to attempt suicide more frequently than men. However, when men are suicidal, they tend to be much more, they make up a larger percentage of the completed suicides than women. So we can assume that, yeah, women are suffering with suicidal ideation. However, we know that they're more likely to reach out for help. They're more likely to not, not to use lethal methods. And so even when they're in crisis and they've made an attempt getting some sort of help. Yeah.
That's a good question. And unfortunately, because of the way this war is turning out, with, as Romana said, so many more survivors out there, there really isn't the numbers yet. The research is being done currently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I will say, and I have to pull it out, that we are looking in the last 10, over the last 10 years, and suicide rates that are 2 to 3 times in some cases. And again, it depends. It's very complicated. It depends by state, because different states, well, California has the largest number of service members in it, but there's other states that have large numbers, some small, but 2 to 3 times the rates of the non-service member population.
Good question.
Mm-hmm.
But now, happy news. These are what our veterans here on campus look like. And some of you may have run into some of these students. And as somebody mentioned, we do have reentry students. As a matter of fact, the majority of our veterans are reentry students, but some are really well seasoned, coming back to get their education.
Mm-hmm.
And we are successful. Since 2009, when the post 9/11 GI Bill began, we've seen over 350 veterans attend UC Davis and get a degree using their GI Bill. And as I mentioned before, 192 dependents have come through and gotten their degree as well. And the vast majority of our undergraduate veterans are transfer students. So they are coming with those transfer issues as well as their veteran issues. But as you can see in the second graph on your right, we have veteran representation in all of our professional and graduate programs. I think there's something like 19 PhDs on there, people in law school, doctors, veterinary medicine. Ironically, we get a lot of calls, people asking about the vet school at our VA office. Yeah, next time, I'll pocket that one for next time.
Victor mentioned the transition issues that are unique to transfer students, and how they're shared with student veterans, because they are typically, student veterans are transfer students, and they're often reentry students as well. So one of the things to keep in mind out of the gate, regardless of what unit you're working in, is that many of our student veterans do not disclose their veteran status. And for the reasons that you would think. One, fear of prejudice, that they will be stigmatized, that they will be considered baby killers, that they, or just people will have a perverse interest in what they did over there and things like that. And that brings me to the second reason that they often don't disclose, and that's that they just want to be a student. And I think some of the advisors in the room will tell you, if they have a chance, when they've talked with them, this is kind of their wish. I want to leave that behind. I did my time in the military. I've earned this. I want to be a student now. And so, unfortunately, if they're not using their benefits, we don't know who they are. And there will be some that won't use their benefits for undergraduate purposes, because it's actually in their best interest financially to wait if they're going to go to graduate school or professional school to use that money.
And the UC system is doing a much better job of including in the entrance application a question asking about military service for us to better help identify who those students are. The second point, our veterans are notoriously bad at utilizing our resources. We come, and I'm no exception. I was the same way when I was a student here. I thought that I could do it all. You know, we come from environments where we are taught to adapt and overcome, where we're taught to drive on, where we're trained to be helpers and protectors, not to ask for help. And so it becomes that difficult when we are in academic difficulties, or if we're struggling for whatever reasons, to seek out that help, to ask somebody for help, because asking for help is a weakness. And if you're weak, you're a detriment, you're a liability to the team. For some of these veterans that are combat vets or that have been in country, being that liability means that somebody's going to get killed. And so we are, unfortunately, notoriously bad at using our resources, or even recognizing that there are resources. And we all know that UC Davis has a million and one resources available for these students.
And on that point, vets, they avoid seeking mental health treatment, medical treatment, like the rest of us. And for the same reasons. It's still, mental health issues are stigmatized. But guess what? It's even more stigmatized for the reasons that Victor already alluded to in the military. Veterans are, again, trained to be self-reliant, to be strong. You're the protector, you're the helper. So you can't be sick. There's no sick day. So they're trained, and I heard this a lot from Victor, other folks, to suck it up. And
do some push-ups.
You do some push-ups, yeah, push through it. And, you know, you would be surprised to what extent they will suck it up. I often see, I don't think there is a veteran that I've seen, I'd say majority, will tell me that they ignored injuries that were relatively minor, that they may have sustained, let's say, boot camp, stress fractures, exceedingly common, especially in women, another unrecognized silent disability. Ignored it. I'm tough, I can handle it, I don't want to be, considered the weak link, and now they are suffering with arthritis, they're wearing braces, so on and so forth, and it can get pretty, it's amazing what kind of pain they'll tolerate and discomfort.
So we're going to talk a little bit about a clash of cultures, and I will talk about the military aspect, and then Romano will chime in on how that translates to the civilian world. So in the military, there is a high level of order that our veterans are in. We know what our chain of command is. Our day is planned for us. We know that every morning at 6 o'clock I have to be in formation to go out and do push-ups, do my physical training. I know what time I got to be at work. I know what time I got to eat lunch. I know who to report to. I know who has the answer. So there's a high level of order there. And there's a high level of respect for the hierarchy. When I was a sergeant in the Army, I expected my underlings, my troops, to respect my authority, to respect what I had to say, because I was responsible for their welfare.
On the campus, there's very low level of order from the perspective of a student. But they have to find who has the answers. And they've got to do it ostensibly on their own. And especially as a transfer student, not coming in as a freshman with a cohort, not knowing anyone, it could be very lonely, that process. They ask themselves, being used to having someone to tell them where, when, why things are, having a chain of command that will answer those questions for them. What is the chain of command here on the college campus? How do you make sense of that?
I always try to tell colleagues that I work with that veterans are very good at following lists. So if you have a list of things that you want them to do, it's a lot easier than actually telling them, hey, you should be doing this or you should be checking this out. Tell them what to do and they'll do it. Next, the training that we receive instills a great amount of personal responsibility and accountability in our veterans. I talked about how, in boot camp, you're taught that the overall mission is what's important and not your individual needs. And it's, in the service, at times I was responsible for millions of dollars of equipment that I had to maintain and that I had to, provide budgets for. And then when I got out of the service, I couldn't get a job as a burger flipper. So things like that, we adapt to challenges. We have to get the job done. That's where that adapt and overcome comes from.
And on the campus, much less responsibility. Homework is not seen as a life or death situation. But helping another vet that might be having trouble, that might be life and death, would be seen as something that they need to do over, they need to prioritize even over their college work.
I think that now what we'd like to do is show you a film. There are some pretty graphic images on the film, very realistic. So I encourage those of you that need to step out, please, by all means. This is a film done by a veteran down at the University of Southern California who was a film study student about his experiences. I've seen this film a couple times already, actually more than a couple times. And every time even I get a little choked up because it brings he really encapsulates what the experience of some of our veterans are.
Okay. We'll be in the back of the room. If anybody needs to talk, what have you, we'll be back there.
We apologize. This is the end of the short, and we wanted you to see this because our veterans are alone here on campus. And at the end, as you can see, they find their community, and that's the idea. And we're running out of time, so we're just going to skip to this is what you can do. Okay, very briefly, think about what you say when you're saying thank you for your service. Do you really mean that? This is something that as a society we've been taught to say, but to a veteran, when you say thank you for your service, I'm thinking, what do you know what I did? I could have done some terrible things out there, and you're thanking me for that. So instead of that, try saying, I'm glad you're home safe. How can I help you be successful here at UC Davis? Familiarize yourself with military culture as best you can. Do not assume that student veteran is suffering with PTSD or mental illness. A lot of them do not. And certainly assume that veterans juggle multiple responsibilities. A lot of them are reentry students, they have family members. And refer them to the UC Davis VA office or our community counselors, Dr. Vermont Norton. We can work to develop policies and procedures that are supportive of student veterans, help student veterans transfer their military skills to civilian language, be thoughtful and respectful, especially when discussing war, the military, or veterans issues. We were out there doing what we were told to do. We were out there doing our job. We didn't make the policies. We didn't ask to go there. They told us to go there. And participate in veteran events here on campus and attend a vet allied training, which we will offer to the campus community here in the coming year.
We're sorry that we're out of time. The programs are running late. You will have access to our Prezi, and you do have handouts to take with you. So you will have this information to take back to your units. Thank you so much for attending.
Just get to the end now.